Recorded live from the dungeon, this is the Dream Warrior Review, and I'm Kurt Thomas.
And coming at you live from the hills of Tennessee, straight from his Tennessee Hyundai,
I'm Mick Strawn.
Mick Strawn.
Mick, Kurt.
Hey guys, good morning. So was it a truce or victory by one side, or what the hell happened?
I have no idea. I literally, after this helicopter was circling this parking lot, and then these SUV cops started pulling up and coming around with their lights on. I have no idea what was going on. So I had no idea, but it just kept going and going. And so I feel really bad, but thank you guys for, rescheduling. And
No problem. I think you need better neighbors.
Yeah, I know. Well, that's the thing is I'm out of town in Ohio where I'm from and staying at a hotel. So, but the lobby of the hotel, and I had people up, my family was visiting in the room upstairs, and then the lobby was bustling. And then outside was where the helicopters were. So I was just like, I have nowhere.
You had nowhere to go.
Nowhere to go. That was
Gotcha.
That's why I was like, oh my gosh. But now it should be nice and quiet. There's a truce. There
you go. All right. Well, welcome back.
Yeah, and if you guys want to start from the start, I'm fine with that too. Whatever you think is best, however you want to cut it together. I know we're just about to talk about critters, but
a little bit of chaos is appreciated.
Yeah.
Right?
No,
right.
It's true. It feels honest. It feels real.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, we talked a lot about, obviously we talked about ThanksKilling, and we're just getting into critters. And I was anxious to hear that, Mick being the amazing production designer he is. I had to say that. He paid me to.
Uh-huh.
But, you'd probably want to talk to him about that because you obviously were a fan of critters. And
Huge fan.
Yeah. And we both appreciate your short film. So I think that's kind of where we should pick up.
Let's start there.
It's really funny because I wanted to tie. I've been thinking about this all morning. I wanted to tie this together with a story from the making of the town of Critters.
Oh, I would love to hear it.
Storytime.
It's Storytime with Mick.
Storytime with Mick.
Storytime with Mick.
Storytime with Mick. Storytime with Mick. Storytime with Mick.
Okay, on Critters 2, what we had to do is we had a town in the Midwest that literally we had rented the whole town because it was just totally required for the script that we have an entire town.
Right.
And we couldn't put it together around LA, and so finally we had this town, and all of a sudden in I think September, a freakish winter came down, and it just dumped this town in snow.
Okay.
And so complete, the production design. So literally they were 3 weeks away. They were completely screwed. And I think that they actually got an insurance settlement, and they got I think that we had $250,000 to deal with the problem.
Okay.
And so our solution was somewhere above LA in
Saugus, right?
Saugus, yeah. And Saugus is a sort of right in between Canyon Country and Newhall.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a hilly area, and it was a really wet winter, and the hills had a lot of grass and stuff on them. Mm-hmm. And there was an old abandoned school up there. And the abandoned school, what we did is in the parking lot of the abandoned school and the parking lot, we pulled out a fence so that the parking lot and the asphalt for all the basketball and stuff, that became our street. And what we did was we just built these big block buildings in the middle, which looked like a group of buildings, but were actually all one building with a bunch of different facades around it.
Uh-huh.
and then the back of the school, we used the buildings in the back of the school, the classrooms, we made a facade of the bank with the bank and the it had a bank and a bakery and it had the place, the printing office that was all the time, right? Okay, that was actually a classroom, and we bullnosed out. We just built a wall in half of it, and our offices were on the other half of that, and and if you had ever stopped and looked the other way, you notice we were always looking outside onto the town, right? Well, if you'd ever turned the camera around, it would have been one of those classrooms from the 70s, that has a slightly sloped roof, and then it's all glass on one side.
Okay.
That was the glass side, right?
Okay.
So we're building, and we're in the office right next into that area, and man, I had carpenters everywhere because we only had like 3 weeks to do it. And so buildings are going up left and right, and the office, and we were building the church, and we're doing left and right, and I'm in there with two other people in the office, and my lead carpenter walks in, and all of a sudden a tear gas grenade breaks one of the little windows on the side and drops into the room and starts spitting tear gas around.
Wow. Okay.
And I am telling you, it was like it had dropped from another planet. You know what I'm saying?
Like you're in Red Dawn or something.
Yeah, like what the hell? and all of a sudden are like screaming and the door. I can hear somebody break into the door on the other side, because that's inside of the we had the bolt on the other side of the wall. Somebody had broken in, and they're yelling at us to get down, but we're on the other side of the wall. And it was like, what the is going on here? Yeah. And so we go running out, and we go running, which is the back door. We go running out, and we look around, and suddenly these guys come running around the corner in full tactical gear.
Okay.
And they're like, and all of a sudden they come around and they stop, and they go, and the guy takes his mask off, and he goes, we're going, what do you mean, what the hell are we doing here?
Yeah, what are you
just lobbed a grenade in through our window.
Yeah.
Turns out, and now I know a lot more about what do they call that smoke, right? Uh-huh. Tear gas. I know a lot more about tear gas than I ever wanted to know. For one thing, it really lingers, and we to clean the air, just the air in that building, took forever. And what it was is they had let the LA SWAT teams came up to the school and did their certification training.
Okay.
So every year they came to this quote unquote abandoned school and did their certification training. Only they approached it from the school side, so they had no idea we were there.
Wow. And no one, just a blunder in communication, and just, that's crazy.
Can you imagine? Oh, wait. You mean a bureaucracy in the LA area that doesn't talk to each other?
Yeah, well, yeah.
Yeah, right, exactly, right. So, but we did have 3 weeks to finish the town, and it was a ball-busting. We did have like a couple of great moments in there. The town was literally being designed. It was crazy because the production designer kind of like divorced himself from this. His name was Philip. I can't think of his last name, but Philip Foreman.
Right,
Philip Foreman is a great guy. If you've ever gotten to meet him,
I have not. No, I just know the names because as a fan.
I keep trying to get him out to come out and say things to people, but he's kind of a recluse, and he's the nicest guy in the world though. But he and I sat in Venice in this little tiny studio, and you have to, if you've lived in Venice or if you've lived in LA for any period of time in the film business, when I say the size of a postage stamp, you know that it's actually true in Venice. Yeah. In Venice, I mean, literally, I remember that one of us would have to get up so that the other one could open the door to leave, to go to the bathroom. Right. So it was tiny, and we spent a week just drawing as fast as we possibly could, and then he kind of went on with, the rest of the film, putting together the rest of the film and the set dressing and stuff like that, and I went up and put together the town and continued designing it literally as I was in the town.
Wow.
And it was. It was a lot of fun, I mean, the speed but we did have a very Critters moment.
Okay.
That you being a Critters fan will totally appreciate this.
Okay.
So we were on a hill, and it was very green. We're kind of at the crown of the hill, and on 3 sides around us is just grass going off and looking out into the Bokeh Canyon way below us,
Okay.
And it was perfect for the film, just absolutely perfect, because Bokeh Canyon was not very spread out at the time, and it was very green here, and so very bucolic. But the thing. There was a hillside that they actually filmed their very first Critter Ball. When they all got together?
Yeah, rolling around. Yeah.
Rolling around, right? Okay, and then they roll through the streets and stuff. But what they decided was that they could use the hillside to test the Critter Ball. And the first...
God.
Yeah, right, exactly. You can hear this one coming, catch it?
Yeah.
And so I think they were about 2 weeks from filming... and the Kyoto brothers come on to the set, and all their minions had built a ball, and they had built the ball out of a aluminum frame, and they kind of bolted it together, and honestly, all the guys that were building were kind of like going, "Huh, really?" It's one of those things where, and this is something that I've always noticed about special effects people, is they're divided into mechanical special effects and makeup special effects, and then there's the dickheads, but those are the guys that do optical stuff. But the makeup special effects people don't tend to, or at least that time, didn't tend to have abilities in mechanical stuff, right? And so they had built this aluminum thing that was as rickety as you possibly could imagine, and they kept going, well, we're going to cover it with chicken wire, and we're like, yeah, chicken wire, okay, got it, and then we're going to attach all the critters to it, it'll work perfectly, and we're like, and so all the carpenters had to line up to see this thing do the rolling part.
Okay.
So they got up at the top of the hill, and they put on all these, critters that they were working on and stuff, and they attached, and so the carpenters watch as they push it down the hill. Now, the thing is that the hill was steep enough. And, there wasn't an understanding of mechanics going here, because the hill was plenty steep enough to be right out of their hands, like, immediately, right?
Yeah.
and we watched the critter ball roll down the hill. It started at about 6-7 feet, something like that. At the bottom of the hill, it was about the size of a beach ball, and and we watched it roll down the hill, flinging critters off left and right. And so everybody got to go up and down the hill and collect, try and collect all of the critters back and give them to them. And then they took their beach ball sized critter ball and left. After going over to our generator and turning it to 220 and frying all of our saws, and then they left. Geez. And it was like, yeah, okay, thanks for coming by, guys.
Oh my god!
So that is a little-known critter story just for you, my friend.
Well, and that just goes to show, like in the end, that's probably what people remember that movie the most for, is that the final critter ball. It's on the cover, and
right,
so
absolutely.
It just goes to show, like, sometimes that stuff is so clunky, but it does work in the end somehow when you splice it all together. And
I think in the end, what you're actually seeing is I think that they foamed over a balloon.
Okay. Weather balloon or something.
I think it was a weather balloon.
Okay.
Which probably should have been where they started from the beginning.
Right. Well, I gotta say, I'll tell you my little critter story too that directly ties into your work on the sequel, because as I said, I'm obsessed with those movies. The first two especially were the first movies I was telling you guys yesterday that I really started to kind of study and become obsessed with the credits and what did the different jobs do, and that town of Grover's Bend, because I grew up on a farm in the countryside of Ohio that looked a lot like the farm from the first Critters film.
Right.
And you don't see as much of Grover's Bend, or it's kind of at night, and you guys really blew it up for the sequel, but literally. But
in many ways, yes.
So I was becoming, then when the second one came out, which I probably watched more as a kid just because it's a little bit more fun, it's during the day and all that, but I was obsessed with that town of Grover's Bend. And what threw me off is that title card at the end of the movie that says, the producers wish to thank the people of Grover's Bend, and there's that nice crane shot, and it shows your courtyard and everything there. And so at the time, my dad was traveling for work a lot too, and he would go to Kansas City a lot for work. And Grover's Bend in the story is supposed to be in Kansas.
Right.
So he would constantly be going on trips, and I would have him like, hey, ask around if anyone knows about Grover's Bend and where that is in Kansas, because I want to go on one of these trips with you so that I can go to that town at some point. Because I figured...
And what you're going to have to point out is this is pre-internet.
This is pre-internet, exactly. Yeah,
yes.
It was
good point.
Maybe, well, actually, I think what might have actually made it slightly worse is it was like internet in its infancy. So I was able to look up just enough stuff on IMDb or something but no Google Maps, no actual aerial photos or. So he's looking all around, and he kept saying, like, we'd watch the movie and I'd look for clues or, things in the background. And he kept saying, he's like, Kansas is really flat. Like, there's not.
Yeah. Where did the hills come from?
Where are these hills in the background here that feel, but like you're saying, Mick, like it was really green. It didn't feel like the hills of that part of California that are dead and dry normally.
Right.
So it really sells as this weird, bizarro Midwest kind of in the background. And so he looked and looked and looked and never could find anything. And then another thing that would kind of like throw me off that I couldn't tell. So that just, hats off to you. I couldn't tell what was built, if it was a real town or if it was a fake town. But I do remember the hungry heifer. And the church, and the church, you could kind of see, even at my 10-year-old self, I could kind of tell that there was fresh soil around the base of the hungry heifer. And I was like, well, maybe they built that and they're kind of covering up the frame. Right.
So
I was literally studying, one of the first bits of filmmaking I probably studied was literally your work on that town.
Hilarious. I remember the Hungry Heifer, and by the way, the Hungry Heifer, the name the Hungry Heifer changed, like it was totally.
Oh, really?
it changed all the time as we were doing it. This was a very products. How do I say this? We had to clear a name every time, right?
Right.
So there was literally a company in town that their job as lawyers was to go out and search and find if the name of something was, popular enough so that you didn't want to risk a lawsuit.
Right. Okay.
For defamation, and so I cannot tell you how many different because I think at one point we actually worked the name in Sacred Cow.
Yeah.
but we had so many stupid names, and we kept putting and the thing that surprised us was how many really stupid names. There were like 3 or 4 chain restaurants in the Midwest. We're going,
I'm sure.
You kidding me?
The Crazy Cow and anything that sounded,
The Crazy Cow came and went immediately. I mean, and then finally the Hungry Heifer. And the thing that bothered me when we saw the film, when I saw the film, I wish that I hadn't used cheap plexiglass all the way around the Hungry Heifer, because it was all window, right?
Right.
And back then, acrylics, when they were underneath the sun for any period of time, would warp, and it always bothered me that the windows were so warped.
Well, interesting. I'll have to look. I never, it never looked off to me, but I'll have to check it out.
Oh, there you go.
Even on the Blu-ray, it looks great.
But trust me when I say there's only, I mean, grandmother's house or Lynn Shay's house in the film was real, and that was a real house, and that was somewhere else, and there was one real little building that was on the property, and it used to be the lawnmower shed for the school, and they made that into the was it a beef place?
Yeah, the Polar Burger.
Yeah, the cold building, right? Yeah, that was the only real building. Absolutely everything else was made.
Wow.
It was just a facade that was we were only using the buildings as an interior or as an anchor for the facades that went all the way around the town.
That's fantastic. So, and here's a little question for you that it might, your listeners might think it's interesting, and I'm always interested in just this collaboration and with puppets involved and with the Kyoto brothers. Where is that blending of the construction department, the art department, and the effects department? Because they've got to cut holes for all the puppets and all the modifications to get animatronic cables and stuff. How did you, what's that process like working with them on something like this, where you're constantly building sets to be, for on raised sets and stuff for the puppeteers? Okay,
here's the thing. In that case, the bank was, or the place that had the printing press, that was on a platform because there was action in there.
Right.
And but as far as like the church goes, the church was a complete platform. It was built on a platform. I mean that's kind of the natural thing that you did when you were up against such things. Is you knew when somebody was going to be in a room, and you just started a couple of feet, 2 to 3 feet off the ground.
Right.
And I think the church we set it like 3 feet off the ground.
Okay.
So it's kind of like built into how you do things. But particularly in that case, I mean, some cases are like Nightmare on Elm Street 3, for instance. I'll give you a quick example of it. The snake sequence, right?
Of course.
The snake sequence, literally, there was platforms everywhere that had to do with the snake. There was platforms for the snake to crawl up the wall. There was platforms. That room was the floor and up the wall. So then we moved that room up 8 feet high, so that we could put a movie crane underneath it, and put her on. Put Kristen on the top of the crane with the snake around half of her and blast it up through the floor.
Wow.
So that you get her being trapped by it. Then you have a very small platform with the chair in it that Nancy falls back through as she comes into the dream and goes through the chair. So it's built into it. It's primary. I mean, it is the number one reason that you do things the way that you do, was you did it for the puppeting.
Yeah.
I have stories about, like, back when I did Tales from the Dark Side, and I had a production designer who had a $10,000 couch on the set, and and of course the skeleton that's sitting on the set had to be puppeted.
Oh no! Yeah.
So they ended up just Swiss cheesing a $10,000 sofa. So that's just the way it goes. What are you going to do at the last minute?
Exactly. Well, that's funny you say that, because that was our experience on ThanksKilling 3. Actually, was we built some of that one had a much bigger budget. Well, much bigger in terms of what compared to the first movie, but it was like $100,000 budget for that.
Right.
But it was enough for us to build some sets, because we wanted a Jim Henson sort of puppet sort of feel. So we did. We learned the hard way, the building on top of, a raised set and putting everything 3 or 4 feet up, and then drilling the holes and cutting the holes. But we had that exact gag where the turkey is sitting on a couch and you're going through this. And I was, on the low budget scale, I was the one that was in charge of, gutting this couch. And oh my God, the springs and the foam and
pain in the ass, aren't they?
Fluff. It's a huge pain. And you think like, whatever, I'll just cut through some cushions. And no.
Oh yeah. Hey, listen, cut through a mattress sometime. Oh my God.
Oh, I'm sure that, it's
the old-fashioned mattresses, before they were made out of pure foam. The old-fashioned mattresses, holy shit, trying to get through all that. And the fact is that there's a certain point to where you take out like that, you snap that one wire or that one little piece of steel, and it just it becomes a circle. It goes blank.
Yep. I don't think people a lot of times realize like what hell puppeteers go through. You're around just jagged fresh cut pieces of wood and wire and metal and uncomfortable and
and also it's the last minute. You want to say, well, you could plan for all this, and you can't. You think you can. Nope. You think you can, but you can't.
Right.
Well, Robert Englund used to talk about putting on the it was always the chests of souls, right? At the end of Nightmare on Elm Street 4, that there was always somebody, he'd be halfway through the take, and all of a sudden be ouch, because he had like gotten his titty caught in a gear, or there was a control wire poking through his neck, or like something. It's day. We used to say that. It's funny because George C. Romero is a friend of mine, and we talk about. We want to write a book that says, "Hey, it used to be dangerous." Because sets were dangerous. Sets were really dangerous because you were doing everything you were doing you had never done before.
Yep. Yeah. Sure
enough. So,
wow.
If that kills Critters, if you want to talk sometime, I'll go through all the stories of Critters.
I'd love to. Yeah, I would love to just call you up and talk. I've got so much stuff, that I'm curious about and just admire, everything about it and your work. And that's what I've had a chance to meet the Kyoto brothers and Mick Garris. And I always tell them the same thing. It's just like, people need to hopefully understand that, like, you know, something like Critters, a lot of people could dismiss. Maybe sometimes the crew has fun, sometimes they don't, maybe, but could dismiss it as just some throwaway schlocky thing. But I'm always like trying to say, no, it changed my life, you know, in a weird, it made me, you know, it gave me a passion and something that I wanted to do for the rest of my life. So every movie has, you know, there's somebody out there watching and listening that it might have a big impact on.
This is
like Kazam. Is Kazam one of those movies?
Kazam, there's probably somebody out there, and you guys should try to track them down.
well, it's, you know, there's a lot of mental institutions in the world.
Right.
Right.
So I wanted to talk about your newest film, is it?
Yes, The Headhunter.
The Headhunter is
The Headhunter.
There was yes, that came after the Critters short, and exactly.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about the Headhunter. You don't have a credit for production designer.
I do not, but I was one of the. There was basically two of us that pretty much were the production designers, Kevin and I, who also I wrote the script with and was a producer, and it was really our baby together.
Okay, because I have to say that the production design of it is meticulous and horrifying, and that,
yeah, the whole thing is beautiful. Really, it's a beautiful film.
Thank you.
It is just
the atmosphere is like perfect, spot on.
It's just so good.
Yeah.
What you guys did with, and this is, you know, you had your chance to nerd out. Okay, this is my turn. All right.
All right.
The bucket of blood that you just
oh wow
casually puts underneath the dripping blood, the crustiness.
Yes.
I mean, I'm sorry, how nerdly is this? How deep am I getting in this? I'm like, the crustiness of that bucket was epic.
I'm so glad you asked about the bucket, because I you know, most people, you know, you get asked the same kind of stuff, or you talk about the same kind of things, but I love all the details because we touched every prop in that place. So like every little thing had to be sort of thought about and decided on. But the bucket story, so that was actually because we were filming this movie in Portugal out in the countryside where Kevin's grandmother lives in this little village. And his dad is American, his mom's Portuguese, but he would go and visit this village growing up.
Right.
So that was why we went there, because we knew we had this very medieval looking landscape and his hut location, the at least the stone walls, and then we modified stuff. But point being, there was a lot of stuff that was just there, like in the basements and cellars of some of the houses in this town. So we were having a field day, just, you know, picking through all kinds of old rusted parts. But that bucket was there, and it was just the black pail kind of bucket with the little handle, and that thing looked amazing. I mean, it was just like production designed by, you know,
by
just
God
the villagers
and
of
time,
100
by
years.
God and time, I'm telling you.
Exactly. But then one of the processes that we had, you know, used for the low budget sort of effects kind of stuff on things, the ThanksKilling movies, was realizing the power of that great stuff foam that you can buy in the cans of foam.
Yeah, absolutely.
My gosh. As you would know, like you can do all the turkey bodies were mostly built out of that and then spray painted with feathers just jammed into the sides.
Right.
So it's the easiest thing to put that on chicken wire or something. So we were doing that. I came up with this technique that was basically blasting spray foam into a pail of some kind, and then taking like red spray paint or red blood or food color or something, and pouring it into that foam mixture before it hardens. Before
it hardens. Yeah. It eats half of it up.
Yes, exactly. So you can imagine what it looks like.
Well, I don't have to imagine.
Yeah, you know.
I knew exactly how you did that, and I was like, that is such a good job.
Yep, it eats up half of it, and then it becomes, you keep swirling and stirring, and it gives you this, you know, veiny-like texture. Well, and then we would use that, and I would just kind of goop it onto the stumps of some of the heads, and that was just our quick gore job.
Right.
And so basically, over the course of doing that, I was just using this pail as that mixing cauldron, and it created that goopy, disgusting. After weeks of using it, it just built up and got worse and worse. And I think we had always had an idea for a blood bucket that was catching the dripping remains, and that he would pour that out. But this bucket then just became perfect. So it was like kind of intentional and kind of accidental.
It was
to get that.
It was amazing. I'm not kidding. That bucket was a production designer's dream.
That's awesome.
I saw you put that in, and I was like, oh my God, that's otherworldly right there.
It's you know how hard it is to try and get something like that, and to modify a brand new prop down to that is it's borderline impossible sometimes.
I on Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I had as my when I was growing up, my dad used to go to an auto parts store in the 60s, right? And it was disgusting, right? It was an auto parts store, right?
Right.
And in this auto parts store was a bathroom that when I went in there, I was like, oh my God. And what they'd done is they'd taken pictures of naked women and cut them out and put them solid next to each other until they created the whole room.
Wow. Right? Like a wallpaper. Almost.
Yeah, it was like a wallpaper, right? It was like and the thing is on top of that, nobody ever cleaned anything. So the toilet was like this brown scrudge with this like green with this greenish line where the water constantly ran, right?
Okay.
And this little white streak down the middle where the water was always running and didn't get a chance to ever stick, right? And the greasy hands of people, like where they pissed, there was like literally a handprint on the wall where the guy would lean.
Oh my God.
Right? And the sink was like just disgusting. And I tried to duplicate this effect. I tried to duplicate it on Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3, Leatherface. And I realized when we got into it that it was never going to look the same because we just didn't have that much time.
Right. Exactly.
I literally didn't have the manpower to do it and stay anywhere near my budget because it would have taken a group of like 4 people a couple of weeks to actually make it look like that,
Yeah.
So someday I'm going to actually redo that. Someday I'm going to make a room that disgusting.
Yeah.
It's good to have goals.
Well,
That's great.
I did want to point one thing out about the Headhunter that I really liked. Just the sound design and the Foley work. I'm sure there's some Foley work, but I don't think I saw a Foley credit either.
It's all the same. It's the sound designer Eric Wegener.
Sound designer,
did it all.
Yeah.
So basically, it's a virtually silent film. We did have like a.
Yeah, it was great.
That's what I was going to say. Is you ought. I don't even think that you needed the words that you had.
No.
Interesting.
I don't think so either.
I am a visual storyteller,
Yeah.
And I kind of search for films that because there are a couple of films that have been made that have been silent that needed to not be silent.
Yes.
But I think yours could have been done completely silent all the way through. I think it would have worked.
With that
would have worked for sure.
But the sound, there's so much atmosphere.
With the sound, yeah. No, he had. We did hear that debate a little bit. Is like, well, could you guys actually remove everything? And I think there was a part of us, because I agree. Like, I'm just much more interested in the visual side of things. I think you can usually convey the same story beat or the emotion or whatever it is you're trying to do without having to say it. But I think we were probably even though we were very experimental and sort of, willing to take risks, I think even we were kind of like, gosh, like, we might like that kind of stuff, but there's there might need to be like just 2% of a little bit of stuff to kind of like help people through that aren't down.
I'm your
for this
audience,
kind of
God damn it.
filmmaking.
I'm your
I know.
audience.
Just a tiny touch
I
of
know.
exposition,
It's
right?
just me
Just a
and
little
Kurt,
tiny
man.
touch.
That's
Yeah.
it. That's
Just
all
a
that
touch.
matters.
Yeah, I know.
Well, you know, there are other people out there, I
Yeah.
guess.
There are plenty of people, I'm sure, that it's generally too slow for and that kind of stuff. And we didn't want to cater completely to one way or the other. But yeah, the sound
Right.
design was so yeah, we didn't really record much production audio. We did have a mic on the camera to just pick up, some of the sound effects of him like clanking the jars or grinding powders and stuff. That was actual production audio of those props that he was actually working. But most of it was 90% blank canvas for Eric to work in, which probably in a weird way, because there is a lot of comments on the sound design, and not that to take anything away from what Eric did, no matter what he would have to work with. But I wonder if, having the blank canvas is actually, it's better to be, you've got as much production audio as possible or a full blank canvas, because then he is creating everything. So it feels, I guess, uniform throughout the whole thing. It doesn't feel like there's some studio altered stuff with some production stuff and this stuff, and which is typical. But
it's purely a soundscape. I got that feeling all the way through the film that the soundscape was it was sort of like the music of the kind of the music of the piece was part of the sound design, was part of the audio. Yeah,
it was. That was a thing too. Yeah, that Nick, the composer, was asking of me, as he was like, "Hey, look, this is virtually a silent film. Like, we need to, you, me, and Eric really be on the same page about like who's doing what here, like which, because there's plenty of times where the score it does have sound elements or it could become sound design. There's times where the sound design could almost be musical. So we kind of always were kind of going back and forth on who should be doing what here and what, and then how do they, of course, mix together. But yeah, when you've got a silent film, it's got to be, and you can get away with a little more, I think, because those sound elements can be a little bit, maybe the gore can be a tad squishier, or they're just a little bit bigger, more like pulpy, because there's nothing else that they can kind of steal the show a little bit. They don't need to be subtle. So
no, just a great job all the way around. I just love.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I like how seeing the creature effects, how that has evolved a little bit. Your puppeteering, I should say.
Oh yeah, the monster stuff. I mean, that was most of the monsters in the production design in general was like modified plastic toys and latex masks and just stuff that we would buy on eBay and cut up and then do the corpsing process. Have you ever done that, Mick, where you shrink wrap the plastic drop cloth and kind of like paint it over? And yeah, I'm sure.
Have I ever?
I'm sure every other.
He's probably doing it right now.
You're corpsing right now. Yeah, your arm is corpsed.
Hey, I've got one for you. Mortal Kombat. Right. The lair, Scorpion's lair.
Oh yeah.
I even choreographed and I did that whole scene, right? And what you're looking at when you see the bears with the kings wrapped the mummies that were on them.
Okay.
They are all 60 of them. They are blow up sex dolls.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow,
See?
That's hilarious. And were they inflated underneath then and then dressed up? And wow.
Yeah. Yeah, we inflated them and what we did is inflated them, put little wisps of burnt up clothes on them, and then wrapped them in bandages that had been soaked in tents and charcoal dust and stuff. Yeah. There you go.
That's and that's the magic of all this stuff is you don't need it to be that difficult or expensive, and that's that. And we learned a lot just by watching reading, tutorials online or just watching behind the scenes features and I had been doing, since I was a kid, I'd been, the one that was first in line at the Halloween store to buy the prosthetics and the blood and stuff that they had. And so I was just always in my head was always, trying to be a magician of effects. And at one point I thought that might be what I was going to do, is just go into special effects makeup. So I was doing a ton of that stuff in college, never to the level of being ever considered or something that I would consider myself a professional at it, but just enough that I could understand the tricks that you could get away with in the process. Exactly. And then, combine that with just, us being as creative as possible, and also just going on YouTube and the internet and looking for, tutorials and people that have done stuff, and then knowing, okay, well, we're going to light this with a torch. So if you have like this single light source that's basically predominantly one color.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
By the way.
Yes.
So you learned that from ThanksKilling. You learned to
No generators.
Well, not only that, yeah. Why didn't you just use the flames?
Right.
It was funny because on ThanksKilling, the one thing that I was like, wow, I thought to myself, well, he's going to learn not to try and light flames.
Right.
Yeah, because you would look at all these people that would be in this one, just one light, right? And there's no flickering or anything like that, and they're sitting right next to the fireplace, right?
Right.
And so I thought, the fact that you went from that to this,
Sure. Pure fire. Yeah.
that's a long ways to go. You did a great job.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah. I mean, and that a lot of that credit goes to Kevin, who was the cinematographer, and luckily by now, 10 years after ThanksKilling, the sensors on the cameras are sensitive enough to be able to light something from
you had to blast the
torch.
hell out of stuff then, yeah. Right.
Well, back in my day.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean that.
Sorry.
I was waiting for that.
Yeah, you're right. Well, hey, listen, man, you're a blast to talk to.
Thank you guys.
I think you've done a great job. I think that ThanksKilling, there was this kernel of genius in it that became what you're doing now, and just such a great job and a great person to talk to too.
Thank you guys.
And a thrilling story with your own. Wait until we get done with with that interruption. You're gonna love it.
No, I can't. Yeah,
we're gonna go pure cinema on that.
Why not?
Talk about your sound design.
Yeah.
Oh boy, the pressure.
Right there, you go. Anyway.
Yeah. Thanks a lot for spending time with us. I was just amazed just with this whole conversation, because I'm a huge cinema fan in general, so I'm here to learn and listen to everybody. So the two of you together was really fun to listen to. So.
Oh, nice. Well, good. I'm glad.
Yeah.
I love.
So I'm gonna like this episode.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, man. Great job all the way around, and I'm definitely following your career. And if you need any help, let me know.
Will do.
Yeah.
And thank you.
All of our listeners, get your hands on his all of his movies. Just start watching them.
There you go.
Yeah. Well,
Yep.
and we'll do this again next time, and we'll talk more.
Oh, can I
blood buckets?
Can I ask you really? Can I ask you really quick?
Yeah.
What did you got coming up?
Well, I mean, there's nothing officially, in the books. We're looking at ways that we could, expand the world of Headhunter, which we'd been talking about for, since we were shooting. We were like sitting there on set, and we're like, there's something more here. Like, maybe, I don't know what that is. A little too soon to say kind of what we might be working on there. And then there's this other project I have that I'm really obsessed with. I love science fiction horror films. I don't think there's been enough of that scary sci-fi the way that
No,
the Terminator
not enough.
was, where it's, you know,
Oh, yeah.
it's terrifying, that first one, in some of those sequences, and The Fly and The Thing, and
Alien.
I love that stuff. Alien, yeah, exactly. I mean, that kind of stuff I love. So I have a script that's kind of in that wheelhouse that I'm putting the finishing touches on, and we'll see. So I'm not sure what, you know, set I'll be on in 2020, but something will happen.
Well, let us know, and maybe we can kind of check back in with you as you're filming.
That would be great. I would love that. And
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
as soon as anything, you know, there's something to talk about, I'll let you guys know.
So that's ThanksKilling in space, right?
Yeah, that
Yeah.
ThanksKilling
Yeah.
in space is maybe one day.
Okay. Thanks a lot, man.
Okay, thank you guys. Talk to you
Okay.
soon.
All right, thanks.
See ya.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us on the Dream Warrior Review podcast. Don't forget to tell your friends about us, follow us, and, of course, like us. We can be found on Podbean, which is an amazing app, YouTube, Stitcher, Alexa on any pod, iTunes, Google Play. We're on Twitter as well, at DW Review, and, of course, Facebook. You can find us there. You can also email us at dreamwarriorreview@gmail.com.